Hey, this is Mark Patton, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com. And whatever you do, don't go to sleep.
All right, we're back. Welcome to Without Your Head Horror Radio. I am Nasty Neely Jones, along with my cohorts.
Jeepers John. No, it was Jittery John. I'm sorry. I forgot my name. You all added all these signatures to your names, and I can't remember mine.
That happens. That would make me terrible Troy, by the way.
Oh, man. And joining us right to open the show here, we have Mark Patton, better known as Jesse from A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Well, I guess to some people better known, but I'm sure to others he's better known as Mark Patton. Welcome to Without Your Head.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. The weather's starting to change here in Mexico, so all the tourists have left, and it's getting real quiet, and I'm enjoying myself.
Cool. If anyone wants to call in tonight and ask a question, the number is 508-644-8503. If for any reason we don't answer, we're having a little technical problems here, so just keep calling back. You know, before you took the roles, Jesse, were you a fan of the original Nightmare on Elm Street?
Well, actually, I auditioned for the original Nightmare on Elm Street. The part that Johnny Depp ended up playing, I screen tested for. So I knew of the series, and I had seen it, and I liked it, of course. But after the first one came out, I was basically, on a certain level, sort of offered the second one. So they set up a screening for me on Hollywood Boulevard, Bob Shea, in an empty movie theater at midnight. And that's the first time I really, really paid attention to it. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? So it was pretty exciting. And then I started shooting a week later. So it was a very quick turnaround into Nightmare on Elm Street for me.
Yeah. Now, when I watched the documentary, that they talked about, originally they thought about using different guys, Freddy Krueger. Did you do any scenes with him at all? Did you get to see him on set?
With
a different Freddy Krueger set of Robert Englund.
No, never. No, Robert was set by the time Nightmare on Elm Street 2 started. I mean, he had a body double, but I did almost all of my work with Robert, and Robert and I shared a dressing room. So when we were at Desilu Studios, so we got to know each other very, very well.
Yeah. But at any point, did they put the costume on you? Because I actually thought whenever he was walking into that shower scene, I thought that might have been you playing the part.
No, actually that was in the transformation when he comes out of the fog or the steam. That's definitely Robert. No, they didn't. But they did give me a number of, Robert had peel-away masks, and he had a new one every day. So I have 3 or 4 of those, which I gave to my nephew when he was 10 years old. And being the good kid that he is, he saved them. So they're all in perfect condition. And so now I have people tracking me down trying to buy them.
You're going to give us his email address, right? So we can hit him up.
Well, one of the original gloves. So that's my old age retirement piece.
Oh, awesome.
Somebody offers me a larger dollar figure for it, but I think I'll just hold on to it since one's in the Smithsonian.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Maybe John might hit you up for that.
You never know.
Did you keep anything else from the movie?
Well, actually, I did keep a lot of things from the movie because we had I don't know if I talked about this on the documentary, but the only person I didn't really care for when we were filming the movie was the wardrobe mistress, and she was just not a nice person. And and it's pretty standard at the end of a movie that the costume person gets to sell off the props to return money into their kit. So I had it written into my contract. I did some extra overtime, and I traded that for everything that I touched on the set. So at the end of the movie, everything that Jesse touched or anything that I wore all belonged to me. So I actually inherited the entire wardrobe.
Oh, awesome! Did you keep the glasses?
I have the glasses and I have the swatch and cap. I have the shirts with and without the blood on them because there were 5 sets of every costume. You know, like the clean shirt and the shirt that he had ripped through. And yeah, and they're all in storage. I have all of that stuff.
Yeah. You ever like bring it to any conventions or anything like that?
You know, I really haven't done that many conventions. I know you guys probably saw the documentary. Shortly after Nightmare on Elm Street, I stopped acting, and and I really didn't. You know, once in a while, I would. You know, I was always offered movies for probably 5 years after I quit show business, and my family sort of built a ring around me, and they would like field the calls and all that kind of stuff. So because I really just felt like I needed to leave, that it was probably not the right thing for me to do at that time. And so I really wasn't even aware. I mean, I knew I made a lot of money from Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, I still to this day make a tremendous amount of money from Nightmare on Elm Street on the residuals and all that type of stuff. Because I have a big profit in that in my contract with that particular movie. So, but and once in a while I would, you know, Google myself, you know, maybe once every 6 months or something to see if I was still the, you know, the lead in to the first name up on Google. But I really wasn't aware of the amount of attention that surrounded Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, I mean, I knew it was popular, but I didn't understand there was this whole culture on the internet and the conventions and all of that kind of stuff. I had done one convention for Fangoria when I opened the movie, and then I never did a convention again. So my first convention after 25 years, when they found me here in Mexico, I live in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and they found me through my sister-in-law, and you know, Tommy was just really sweet to her, and she said, well, I think you should call them because they seem like nice people. And so they found me, and 3 days later they flew me back to Los Angeles, and I shot the documentary. And there was you know, I did 6 or 7 interviews, and then they had 2 booking agents there, and they said, do you have any interest in this? Because you're the sort of the Greta Garbo of horror movies. Your signature is really sought after because most people's posters are filled up with everybody but me. So they started booking me in conventions. Now my first one was in Amsterdam, and that was a trip. So they flew me to Amsterdam. I did a convention in Amsterdam, one in Munster, Germany. And the Munster, Germany, somebody just off the internet, I mean, off Facebook, called me and said, would you be interested in doing this? And I thought I was going to a big convention in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And I thought, well, and they said, well, it's a small convention. And I thought, well, I'll just, you know, give it a try. It was late at night. I think I'd had a glass of wine. And I said, sure, I'll come. And I woke up the next morning and realized that it was in Amsterdam. And but it turned out it was a Star Wars convention, which was the one in Germany, and which they had me and the kid from Chucky. I can't remember his name, but
Alex Vincent.
Yes, like I think he was 8 years old when he was in Chucky, and now he just wanted to go to Amsterdam, you know. So, but we got there, and there was all these Germans dressed up as Star Wars characters, and you know, I mean, I still made a lot of money, and people were really interested, but it was very weird. I mean, for my first dip in, it was like, oh my God, they were singing songs in German, and it was a trip, you know? And then I went back to Amsterdam, and that was cool. Then I flew back and literally flew back into Mexico, and 3 hours later was on a plane to New York to go to Cherry Hill. And that was my first big convention. So, and now I'm booked up. I'm starting to get booked up throughout the year, and I'm going to really probably travel pretty much around the United States quite a bit. I mean, I know I'm going to Indiana and Orlando and Los Angeles, and I was supposed to go to Seattle, but that didn't work out. And I've been invited back to Germany and London, and so I'm going to pretty much get to travel Europe and the United States this year for the conventions. And then there's some talk about some Asian conventions, which would be really, really fun.
Huh.
You know, see, these are all nice because they're nice free trips, and you make money. There's nothing wrong with that.
Can't
And
beat that.
The,
No.
the fans are so cool. Like I was like really utterly surprised. Um, uh, you know, it's just like a bunch of really nice weirdos. You know, and I was a weirdo. So yeah. And everybody was really kind and nice, and you know, they just treated me with the best, you know, dignity and respect. So it was great, you know. So I have nothing. I'd love to go to as many as I could, you know, because I really enjoy it.
Well, this is one of our favorite questions on the show. What's the strangest thing anybody's had you sign?
Wow. Well, people have given me pictures that are not me, which is always really weird. And you know, body parts. You always get the body part thing. I mean, like when Nightmare on Elm Street opened in originally in New York, I flew to New York for the opening of Nightmare on Elm Street, and it opened on Halloween. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, it was playing on, I think, 90 screens in the New York area. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, every show was sold out. So I would go into like crowds there and sign autographs. I mean, literally would walk in the door and nobody would know who I was. I could sit down in the movie theater. And then when that was over, it was like being the Beatles. It was wild. So I signed a lot of boobs, you know. That's I think. But I get a lot of memorabilia. People make things for me. There's a friend I have on, his name's Ross, and he builds gloves, and he built a glove for me, which was very nice. And, you know, people ask me to sign they make constructions of the rooms and all that kind of stuff. The COD players, the people who like pretend to be, say, Jesse Walsh or Nancy or whatever. And some of those kids I really like a lot. They're very, very nice. And, you know, they play their games on the internet or whatnot. So usually from them, I get odd things to sign, like maybe a mock-up of the shower room or something like that.
Right.
There are a lot of tricky people out there, but you know that.
Oh, yeah. Do you know if anyone ever got the Fu Manchu cereal box?
I don't know who got the Fu Manchu cereal box. I would love, but that would be a really good one to have in those fingers.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I don't know. A lot of that stuff just is, and surprisingly, it's really, really weird when you're making a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street. A lot of that stuff is rented. I mean, even things like cereal boxes are rented from prop companies, and they go back to the prop company. So they might pay, like, say, $5 a day to rent a box of cereal, as opposed to just store and buying one for 79 cents, you know? And then at the end, the cereal has to go back to the prop house, especially with like name brand. Yeah, well, because with the name brand stuff, unless you have the cooperation of the company, you can't use their logos. And at the time that we were doing Nightmare on Elm Street, a lot of companies were really reticent to. They didn't want their products. They didn't want product placement in a horror movie. Now they pay big bucks for it, but at the time, you know, like Coca-Cola, they didn't want to be affiliated with us. So you couldn't show a Coke can, say. And I'm sure now in the new Nightmare on Elm Street, they probably would pay, you know, $250,000 to have the show. It was just a different thing then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a feeling that's on a prop shelf someplace. Moldy, like, yeah.
Speaking of the new movie, did you see the remake?
You know what? I haven't had an opportunity to see it yet because it hasn't opened here in Mexico. It opens next week, and I've seen the trailers and all that kind of stuff. And I, of course, have gotten lots of reports from people on my Facebook and my fan page and stuff. And so, you know, I'll go and see it on Saturday night when it opens, and I'm really looking forward to it. You know, I always come down on the side of like wishing people success. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street was really, really good to me in a lot of ways, and it's you know, it's a remarkable franchise, and no matter what, trust me, there are going to be 5 more Nightmare on Elm Street, and it was weird in the trailer. Like Jackie, it's weird to look at him, you know what I mean, because he just is not to me, you know, because I mean I have such an intimate relationship with this thing. But I mean, just to me, he's just not Freddy Krueger. I mean, it was like I wish they would have. I'm sure they had their reasons for not wanting Robert. I'm not really sure what those were, or if he turned it down, or what the situation. But the thing is, that character is so identifiable. You know what I mean? It's a part of pop culture. And I don't really think it is wise to mess around with that kind of formula. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, I know kids that have never, a younger set of kids are going to see the movie and they won't have any idea. I mean, they'll go back to the Nightmare on Elm Street and they'll watch it and they'll decide who's the better Freddy Krueger. Mm-hmm. You know, and if he's your first Freddy Krueger, he may be the best one. For me, though, I did miss Robert. I really, really love Robert. I mean, as a person, as an actor, I think he's phenomenal, and I think that was, honestly, that was his to have. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, but I'll sort of wait and see the movie and see what happens. Yeah. The effects look great, so we'll see what happens.
Actually, on the DVD on the second disc, they talked to Robert Englund about the remake, and apparently they didn't even come to him, didn't even offer him like any type of role in it.
Yeah, cameo or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
people are really, Hollywood is like, honey, she's a bitch. You know what I mean? It is a cruel world, and that's kind of just the way it is. I mean, there's like really no, on a certain level, with some people there are, but with a lot of people there's just no common decency. I mean, it's like, at the very least, you can say, we're doing this and we're not going to include you or whatever. But people don't think of that. And a lot of the people that are like moving and driving these productions are very young people. And, the average age there probably of an executive at this point is probably in his late 20s or early 30s. And they don't really think about things like that. I mean, it's more self-centered, more ego-driven, and all that kind of stuff. But one of these days they may need him, and I would certainly have wanted him to be on my side. Mm-hmm. I were producing that movie, even if I wasn't going to use him, I would want him out there, doing the prep work for me, mm-hmm. And giving a good spin to the whole thing, bring him into the picture, but they do what they do, yeah. And that's, there's been a lot of people who have suggested that they bring Kim and I on board for the sequel, which is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And because we're the only two characters that are actually alive inside the series, that we lived through the mayhem. So, it's to bring us back as parents or something like that. And so that'd be really fun to do. And especially for the residuals, it would be, really great.
Yeah, all right. Because
that'll be a lot of money. So, but anyway, it would be fun. It'd be nice to be asked. So, yeah. And I think they should do that. I mean, it's not just, say, me, but I mean, I think they should bring people in from, like, they'd be a fool not to put Clue in somewhere. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Clue's the man. Yeah.
Oh, he absolutely. I mean, he really is. He's a character. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I loved him in Never Sleep Again. I thought it was hysterically funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people said, we said it right after we watched it, and see a lot of people on Facebook, a lot of fans have called in, and they say like the whole segment on part 2 is probably the funniest part of the entire documentary, and the whole thing is great anyway.
Well, I think we had like the juiciest, thing to have fun with and to talk about, because, because so much of that had been debated on the internet for so many years, and then when they, re-released the DVD with the commentary on it, they didn't, like Robert, they didn't ask me to participate in it. And they said they couldn't find me, but I don't think they looked very hard. And I have to say that, honestly, that pissed me off a lot. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was sort of like uh, slammed a little bit by Jack's shoulder, and so when like paybacks are a bitch. I mean, it's like I had very distinct feelings about that movie. I knew what had happened after the fact with that movie in regard to the subtext. And I knew that it was intentional. I had people tell me that it was intentional. And I thought, now Mr. Chow can, now he admits that he did it. But for like 20 years, he denied that he had any knowledge of this. And, what he was like playing with fire, he played with my career in a way that was, I think he thought he was very clever and that it was very subtle. But there were like huge ramifications from that for me, and it turned out to be okay and pretty cool. But I was like had a very on track career, and I can't tell you. I mean, I got the most hateful mail postings on the internet that they would just like, IMDb would have to delete them within 30 seconds of them coming on. Like people saying that I ruined the series and all that kind of stuff. But now, like 25 years later, I cannot tell you the amount of people who have, like I just got, for an example, I'm doing an interview in Germany. I'm in the process of being prepped for it right now. And one of the first questions that they presented to me was, your movie is considered the worst one of them all. What do you think about that? And I'm like, God, you're really trying to get on my good stuff.
Yeah.
But I said, I leave it to, I try to leave that to other people to decide what they like and what they don't like. Because there are some people that Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is their favorite movie. And it's like, it may not resonate with one person, but I've had literally like hundreds and hundreds of people say to me, you know what, that movie was really important to me, and I love it. I still love it, and so I just like leave it to, when I go to a movie. I've had friends tell me, oh, I hate this movie, and I go to it and it turns out to be something that I love, and so it's just, it's just an individual thing, what I mean? But I do think that we had some really fun things to talk about, and there were definitely scores being settled in that inside those conversations too, and they were relayed back and forth by the producers to the people who were involved in the conversation. I mean, because we weren't in the same room together, obviously. Kim and I were, and Heather and I were, but not say Jack Shoulder and any of those people. So it was fun. I loved doing the documentary. And then after that, because of the conversation was about, the Homo Nightmare on Elm Street. I've been interviewed by every magazine out after Elton, just like Newsweek, and it's like, because that was a seminal period in history for those type of things. So, it was like, and I have nothing to lose. You know what I mean? I own an art gallery in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I'm not trying to have a film career at this point. So I can pretty much say whatever I want, and I can burn any bridge that I want because I closed that door some time ago. So I can tell the truth and not be afraid of, somebody getting mad at me and not hiring me for a job or whatever. Yeah. So just sort of live my life. And I'm having a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. They kind of, cut some of that out, and it's in the extended like interview with you on the second disc, where you talk about how like the experience with the movie like kind of led you to leaving Hollywood. Do you think they cut that out of the actual documentary just to kind of keep it more lighthearted?
Oh yeah, no. I mean I think the first disc is for like the fan, right? And I think the second disc is for like the diehard fan. Sure. And I think they did exactly the right thing. I mean, I love those guys. I think they did a really wonderful job. And it's where it's become more interesting in regard to that is, like, I did a Q&A, which is on, I think it's on YouTube now, but in Cherry Hill in New Jersey. And like we went in, to talk about the movie, and I was like, fully prepared to, I mean, this crowd was like, it was like mostly guys. It was, like sort of like New Jersey jock types. And I didn't really know what to expect. And all the questions from the audience were, like basically around that situation. I mean, they were like, they were truly interested. I mean, I had people say like, "Oh, I never got that," or, and it was the secondary, like the second part of the Q&A became the more questions that you would think would be asked about Nightmare on Elm Street, like the illusions or the personalities of the other actors or whatever. But the first part of the Q&A, which was an hour long, was really taken up with people asking questions about that situation, and actually being really, really, really supportive and really kind, and saying, you know what, you really should come back and act again because you are a good part of the community. So I don't think they let you come back after 25 years, but I'm an old man now. So, but anyway. So I think they did the right thing in the way that they edited the video, because it's fun, it should be fun. And I mean, it's like Clue's, quest. I mean, that's the best.
Yeah.
In the whole thing, you know what I mean? And how could you take offense at that? It's hysterically funny.
Yeah. Yeah, we had Andrew Cash on a couple weeks ago, who's the co-director of the movie, the documentary, and he really he said it was a lot of fun interviewing you and Clue. And do you have any story with Clue from the set that you didn't talk about on the documentary?
Well, Clue was first of all, Clue is a legend, and in like the acting community, and as is Robert, right? So and Hope Lang played my mom, and Clue, played my dad. And they were such, they would take me out, like Hope would take me out and get me drunk for lunch, because she was drunk the entire time. So, I mean, literally, she was drunk the entire time. And she was a great lady. I mean, she could, she could pull up, she could do 5 martinis and then walk on the set and do her thing, and then she'd go home. And Clue was just like, he was just like a good pal to me. He was like, all of the people on that movie were very protective of me. I had worked in, New York quite a bit before Nightmare on Elm Street. And, I had worked with Robert Altman, and they all really respected that in the way that I had come into the business. So they were all pretty protective of me, because a film set in Los Angeles is a trippy place. I mean, there are people, reporters there that are sort of undercover, taking pictures of you, and there's agents trying to poach other people's clients and stuff like that. So all those guys really sort of formed a ring around me, and just took care of me and made sure I had the space to do what I needed to do, because I was carrying that movie. I mean, it's amazing how much I'm in that film, and for a young actor, that's a lot. It's a lot. It sort of rests on your shoulders to be there all the time, and the days were really, really long, and we shot it really fast. So I got all of the overtime that was allowed on the movie, which was a nice gift from the producers, because you start to make a lot of money on overtime. But I was working 16 and 18-hour days all the way through. You know what I mean? There was no stopping, the whole thing. So so that they were more paternal to me than anything else, really.
Yeah. Well, here's one thing that I don't think they asked on the documentary. Was that a stunt ass, or was that your ass?
No, that's my ass. That was my. I don't know if it's still my ass, but it was my. Yeah. No, it's weird when you're a kid. I did this movie called Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean. I had done the play on Broadway, and then I filmed the movie. And I remember thinking at the time, because I wore bib overalls with no shirt on and all this kind of stuff, and I remember thinking, oh, I'm such a dog or whatever. And then in Nightmare on Elm Street, it's because all my first scenes were with Robert Ressler, and Robert had a really great body because he worked out a lot and all that kind of stuff. And I just felt like I was like a fat pig. And then I look back at those movies and think, oh my God, you poor guy, what were you thinking? But I mean, I think that's just being a young person. But I wish I had that ass now.
Have you ever pulled out? Go on, sorry.
I'm still doing all right though. I think I'm holding up okay.
All right. Have you ever pulled off any of those dance moves since the movie?
Yeah, I'm a much better dancer than that.
Right.
We would allow you to believe. We like to dance down here where I live. Everybody does. It's like it's a cultural thing, and we go dancing, a couple of times a week sometimes. And I can bust a move, definitely. But I think that scene in the movie is so bizarre, the reaction to it, because so many people really like it. Mm-hmm. And I think I said this in the documentary, but the real music for that was Tina Turner's Steel Claw, and which I picked, but then they couldn't afford to buy that song for the movie. So then that's when they put in Bonda's All Night Long gay disco song. Mm-hmm. And yeah, but we did it in the documentary. It was a little embarrassing. I realized I wasn't, 25 anymore, so.
It made for a funny scene.
Oh, I think it did too.
Yeah.
I did too.
Here in the chat room, Brish Uncool, he was saying, kind of like we were talking about earlier about being a young guy in the movie. He was saying, what was it like to be such a young actor and be paired with a seasoned actor like Robert Englund?
Well, I knew Robert before, so by reputation, and Robert was in a movie called Buster and Billy, and with Jan Michael Vincent, and I remember this movie really, really well because there was an albino in it, and he was the protagonist, and he was amazing. And I remember thinking at the time, where did they find this albino, that can act like this? I mean, it's amazing. And that, of course, it turned out to be Robert. And so I started following his career like pretty early on as somebody that I thought was very, very interesting. But by the time I got to Robert, who Robert made me very comfortable, and we were peers. I had worked with like people like Geraldine Page and Sandy Dennis and Robert Altman, and I'd really sort of worked with the highest level of people in the world in New York, and I had met. When I was doing that particular movie, I had met everybody. I mean, from the Rolling Stones to David Bowie, Robin Williams. We went to dinner with these people. So Fame, by the time that I started to do Nightmare on Elm Street, Fame, and I was very secure in myself as an actor. And also, I had been surrounded by famous people for many years. So it wasn't really something that, rocked my boat. You know what I mean? It was like I knew people. By that time, I understood that people were people. Mm-hmm. And, and if you talk to them like they're just another person, then everything's cool, So I worked with Chuck Connors. I don't know if you guys remember him, but he was on The Rifleman. You probably
The Rifleman, yep.
Yeah. And I did a television series with him, and he was just a jerk. I mean, he was like a typical old-time movie star. And he trained me he would show me these little tricks on how to get people to do things that you want them to do without them knowing that you're manipulating them, so that they do something for you that you want them to do, and then they're very grateful that they got to do it. And by the time I got to Nightmare on Elm Street, there was none of that. But that I dealt with a lot of those old-time stars who were, either in the theater or whatnot, and they were like a crazy lot of people. I mean, the pissing contests were very strong, especially among those older actors, about who was, who was the top dog in the deal. And in our movie Nightmare on Elm Street, it was like Robert and I. That was we were the two people that couldn't be fired. So so we had a good alliance and had a really 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 good time. I mean, I had so much fun making that movie. I can't tell you. It was just it was a blast.
Mm-hmm.
I love Kim. Go ahead. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just here in the chat room. HT Ray 501. He says he recently went back and watched Come Back to Five and Dime. Jimmy Dean. The scene where you were gay bashed was very sad. Very brave of you to take this role so early in the 80s. And do you still talk to Cher, Karen Black, or any of the other actresses from the movie?
Well, I do talk to I talk to Kathy Bates, who is a friend, and Kathy wasn't famous when we did that, so and of course where she ended up, and she was the president of the Screen Actors Guild for quite a while, so I would see her at events and whatnot because I still am very involved with charity work for the Actors Fund of America, and so her and I for Cher and I were very good friends, and we were friends for a few years. I mean, when we were in the movie and the play, we were very, very tight. And, like we'd spend the night with each other and that kind of stuff. And I babysat Elijah and like took Chastity to her first discotheque by herself. I think we went to Matt Dillon's birthday party or something. So, like, I was very involved with that family. But after a certain amount of time, when you separate from a person who's a star like Cher, you can't live in that world. It's a very insulated world. But I do have a telephone number, which I am allowed to use anytime I want to. And so anytime I'm in a city where she's doing a concert, all I have to do is call that number. And I have always received tickets. So I could go to Vegas and I can go backstage and see her. But as far as like calling her up on the telephone and that type of stuff, it's not possible with that type of person. They're far too. There's a web around them that's really, really, really strong, and unless you're a part of that circle, you don't have regular contact with them because they're just too rarefied. It's like probably 10 people talk to her on a regular basis, but she was great. She was a good Karen. I see on occasion. Karen was in the best, and I say this in the best possible way, and I don't want to say this. It's not negative at all, but she was crazy as bad shit. And, she's just like a whack job extraordinary. And I loved her. And we were playing the same person. So, I was the before and she was the after. And she would call me, I had a roommate that I grew up with. We were high school friends and we were living in an apartment in New York. And, like one day I brought Cher home and she woke him up so he could go to work. But Karen Black would call every night on the telephone to talk to me on the telephone, so our voices would sound the same. And even he got to the point where it's like, when is she going to stop calling you? But she's I think I don't know if you guys have seen Jimmy Dean or not, but Jimmy Dean won the Cannes Film Festival and also won the Golden Bear in Germany, and she's an amazing performance in that movie. It's freaky how good she is. She's either really, really bad or really, really good. She's one of those people. And Jimmy Dean, she's really, really good. I mean, she really looks like a transsexual. It's scary.
So we got a caller here on the line. We got a Weeble.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Did I interrupt you? Sorry. Were you saying something?
Hey, how's it going?
All right.
All right. Was there any rumor about, you remember how in the original Nightmare on Elm Street they made Freddy a child murderer instead of a child molester? Was there any rumor that why they scrapped the idea or switched it?
Well, I think they decided that they would make him a child murderer, but I think the molestation thing at that time was too. I mean, it was like it sort of implied, but like again, it's sort of like with any of the sexual stuff at that time. All the things that have happened since then. Like now we're all really aware of child molestation and all that kind of stuff because we've heard so much about it on the news and stuff. But at that time, people weren't really talking about that stuff, and it was just considered so repulsive that there would be no way that you could. I mean, you have to have some sympathy for Fred. You know what I mean? I mean, you have to identify with him, and you can't make him. I mean, he can murder people, like stick his blades in their stomach, but like if he's like blowing little boys, it's like it's not gonna, you're not gonna have any sense of happy. So, and then I think and as I said, I haven't seen the new one, so I know they do that a little different in the movie, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. And it does make him more hateful, you know what I mean? It's
yeah. It makes it hard though to wear like walk around with a Freddy T-shirt on if he's like a hardcore child molester in the movie.
Exactly, and also like, well, it's a lot of people don't understand that kind of thing. I mean, there's a certain segment of the population that like they wouldn't even it wouldn't matter to them. I mean, it's just like it's a movie or whatever. But then there are the movie studios. They think about this stuff a lot because it's like it really can affect your ancillary rights to images and whatnot because a lot you can get like a whole firestorm going really, really easily with especially with people who've been molested and stuff like that because they're very vocal and they're very organized and and they're like trying to tell a story to the world that probably needs to be told so yeah because that's a pretty devastating thing to happen to a kid so I think it's something people don't recover from so so I don't know why they did it but we'll see how it plays out for them. But I think Freddie was scary enough just being, who he was. He didn't really even need a backstory. It's like the minute those clubs came out and the eyes, I wish I said this in the documentary, and I wish people could actually hear Robert's voice in the movie because of course they overdub it in the film, so it has that hollow effect. But I'm telling you, like on the set with him, his real voice is so much more terrifying than the illusion that they gave him. I mean, I was like totally creeped out sometimes. I mean, he was just, that scene where his blades are in my eyes and he pulls off his head. That and the scene in when we kill Grady. Was, he is like a lunatic. I mean, like really, really frightening. I mean, just very, very creepy. The whole vibe on the set was very creepy in those times. And then we always break the tension afterwards. But like that transformation scene where he comes out of my body, that took 3 days to shoot that. Mm-hmm. And we are operating at a level of intensity that's pretty intense. And he could stay in his character, in a really, really strong way. And I really do wish at some point people could hear his voice because I think they'd be surprised at how much more disturbing it was than what actually it sounds like in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Did that help you get into the role better?
Oh God, yeah. He was. Well, by the time we did that, the transformation, a lot of people comment on my screaming in that movie. Yeah. And like when Kim and I first came to work there on the first day, we screamed the first day, and it was kind of like like the sort of scream that you hear in like these kind of movies. And the more time went along, it's like they would say scream, and we could like blast out the block. You know what I mean? It was like Sydney, the girl that Sydney Walsh, she shot at the first week and the last week. And when she came for the last week, when we shot the stuff on the bus with her, and they said scream, and she blew the take because she just couldn't believe it. I mean, she opened her mouth to scream, and she was kind of like, sort of like woodsy kind of scream. And Kim and I were like the Mormon Tabernacle choir, you know. It's just like it just naturally came like screaming out of it. And you know, it's like once in a while I have somebody still like I tell you I've become really terrible. It's like there was a girl, April, who's now a friend of mine and she wrote on Never Sleep Again. She tagged one of my photos and said something to the effect of, you know, Kim looks pretty good, but Mark time has not been kind to him. And, you know, I like just popped it right back at her. And I think she was like totally freaked out, you know, and I just sent her an email and I was like, you know what? You don't need to say that. I'm 50 years old. You know, I'm not, Kim is 40 years old. I'm 10 years older than Kim. And, you know, that's kind of an asshole thing to say.
Yeah.
And, you know, and she, I didn't say asshole, but, and then she wrote back and she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I never thought you would read that, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, that's why a lot of people on Facebook won't talk to fans. And it's like when you log on to my Facebook, if you IM me, I talk to you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I expect you to be, you know, somewhat respectful of me because, I mean, you're calling me up. You know what I mean? I'm not calling you.
Right.
You're calling me. And you know, like people who are fans can they can be wonderful or they can be really mean because I think on a certain level they think they're not dealing with a real person or they're thinking that that their voice is really never going to be heard. But I'll tell you a secret about actors. They all read everything. So if you're making a post online, 90% of the time, the person that you're posting on is going to read what you say. And now you may never hear from them, but they read it, and because it's important to them. And like, so one guy sent me, you know, posted something about me screaming like a girl, and I, you know, like in a really sort of derogatory way. So like, you know, I hit him up, and I was like, you know, if you had a, you know, 8-inch blade stuck in your eye, you scream like a girl. Trust me. And like now we're friends. You know, he and I are friends on Friendspace or whatever, and he on Facebook, and he was like, "Oh my God, really? Was that blade that long?" And it's like, "Yeah, it was." And it was as sharp as a razor. I mean, they had plastic ones, but when they came in for a close up on my face, those were razor blades in my eyes, and I mean, and they were like a centimeter from my eyeball.
Oh my God.
And you know what I mean? And so, you know, the realistic thing to do as an actor is really scream. I mean, if somebody sticks a gun in your face, you're going to scream like a girl too, I guarantee you. You're either hands or you're going to like, you know, something. So I thought it was like sort of germane to the movie. I never realized it would cause that much, you know, people would, it was that girly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
Sounds like you were frightened to me.
Oh yeah. That's what I think that's what being scared sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not, you know, like, you know, that doesn't match my personality, my body, or anything at all.
I think like you said, I mean, if some dead guy with blades coming after you, I don't think you're going to be thinking, man, am I screaming, you know, manly enough? Or,
exactly. You're just thinking,
I sound like Barry White when I'm screaming.
yeah, exactly. No, what you want to do is just get the fuck out of there. You know?
Exactly.
You know, you're saying like, you know, a lot of people online were, and yourself was, you know, thinking about getting Jesse into the sequel. Have you ever thought about like what you thought happened to Jesse after the movie?
You know, actually, I did, and I wrote a script actually about it, and I wrote actually 3 scripts. One was optioned by New Line, and I never showed that one to them because I didn't think it was. I don't know why I didn't. It was kind of stupid. But I always had a. I'm going to answer this in 2 different ways, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
I wish, like, when you go back to the subtext of the original My Nightmare on Elm Street, I wish they would have let me in on what was going on in regard to this because I would have played the character totally differently. I would have played him more depressed and more like sort of listening to the Smiths and you know, dressed in black most of the time, and like that could have been like a wonderful interpretation of that role. like that alienated kind of, as opposed to the happy preppy kid, like the really alienated type of person who might come in and shoot you in the school. So, but my idea was, I always thought it would be really cool to um, put Freddie in New York City. And of course, New York was my home, my primary home. So I wrote a screenplay where Jesse had gone off to NYU and was a teacher, and Freddie showed up there, which that breaks it out of the house mold. But I just kept seeing him on the subway. You know what I mean? The sound of the subway trains in New York sounds like those blades,
Right.
and all I could, like I could see him on a train in an urban center, and just like you could have like fantastic things.
Visuals.
But I think but I think in real life it's like I always thought, like, well, probably, Jesse and Lisa were, ended up best friends. I don't know. They moved to San Francisco together. I don't know. I don't know what happened to them. But I would like them to, if they would, in the sequel, I think it would be really fun if they did bring Kim and I back and have us as a married couple, and that maybe we, like the scene where her parents at the party where the pool catches on fire, like to do that same kind of thing would be really fun, just for the passage of time.
Yeah. Thanks for calling in, Weeble, by the way.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Let's have Freddie on the line.
Hey, we got Freddie Fingers on the line.
Hey, Freddie.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good, thank you.
Is that your question, Freddie?
My first question is that how do you feel about being the first male lead in the Freddie Fingers in the Nightmare on Elm Street?
I felt like really good about it. It's like one of the, we talked about that in Never Sleep Again. I don't know if you know that, if you've seen Never Sleep Again yet. But basically that part that's a woman's part. I mean, it's like traditionally in a horror movie, that part would be played by a girl, and Lisa's part would be played by a boy. I mean, so it was interesting. It was an interesting experiment, and I was just thrilled to have the job. It was like I've said before, it was a really fun experience for me, and I was just glad to be there. So whenever they pick you to star in a movie, it's if you're an actor, I don't know if most people comprehend how rare it is for anybody to star in a movie. I mean, the scrutiny that you go through, by the time they offer you a role, they're very certain about who you are. And, of all the actors in the world, the people that are in the club of ever starring, even in one movie, is a miracle that it ever happens to you. So, when I'm dead and gone, I can, honestly say there was a day that I was a movie star. You know what I mean? It may have been like 2 days, but I accomplished that goal, and that was great. So I felt really good about it.
Rock on, rock on. I always kind of wondered about how, Freddie was always burned, and then you came out of him with the shell when you're ripping it off your face. Give me some details about your outer costume when you were ripping off the ash off your face, and then hey, I'm still living.
Right. That actually was filmed at a old factory out in the middle of like the desert of California, and that they lit up the place. I mean, it was like controlled burn, and I was covered with oil, like motor oil, and burned. Like wood pieces, basically, is what they really were. They're wood. Like there was a lot of burned newspaper on me and stuff, and it was nasty. I mean, it was like really, like nasty, and it was hot. It was probably like 100 degrees anyway, and then the place was on fire. But But I think it's a nice reveal. I think it looks, really cool. I felt more sorry for. I mean, I was covered in the crap, but I sort of felt more sorry for Kim than me because she had to slide into it, and then every time we did it, she had to change clothes because she had because there were multiple takes on that kind of stuff. And so she would have to have her makeup redone and her clothes had to be changed and everything so she would look like she hadn't touched that before. So, but I think that, that was a long time ago, and I think the special effects in the movie, there was no CGI then, and I think the special effects, with the exception of the birds, were all pretty good. The birds, I think, if I were the director, I would have cut that bird scene out of there. I don't think I would have let that stay in the movie. It just didn't work. You know what I mean?
That was a pretty segment on the documentary too. He mentioned that when he asked the guy who did that scene what his greatest work was, and he's like, "Oh, when I worked with the Three Stooges." So
right,
the guy's was around for quite a while.
Yeah, oh yeah, there were a lot of hoary old guys on there that had been working since the beginning of time. Because again, they didn't have a lot of money. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street. Well, when Heather and I would talk about it, it's I think my budget for my costumes were $20,000, and that I got to spend $20,000 on clothes for the movie, and Heather got $100. For the first Nightmare on Elm Street. She was there were no perks on the first Nightmare on Elm Street because they had no money. I mean, that whole story. But they were still being pretty tight with us. I mean, I think we made $50 million or something, but they didn't have that $50 million yet. So, but we were on a luxury train compared to the original guys. I mean, I had my own trailer and all that kind of stuff. So, and we were treated really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Question?
Was that all your questions, Freddie?
I'm still here, man. Yeah, I always kind of just, that you had your partner, whether it was Jesse or Lisa or Nancy and Glenn, man. You always got that person to depend on, and that's what I kind of like to see, whether, I ain't even talking about the remake, but I always liked that, where it was just that feeling that, you kind of had that person to rely on where, you didn't have your answers that couldn't be questioned by yourself, so you had to rely on the other person that responded.
Right, yeah. Well, you need that, you know what I mean? That's an important part of that whole drama, that you, especially when things are in your head so much in this type of movie, I mean, it's all imagination and you're in altered states a lot of the time. You need that pair of people that's what drives the drama. You need that pair of people to, kind of walk the audience back into the story, to keep it straight. Yeah, I think they did a really good job of always having those kind of friendships in Nightmare on Elm Street. And I loved Sydney, and she played Lisa's friend, and then Robert and I, of course, I really like him, and we were pretty close. We hung out quite a bit, and he was a player, definite player. He's not now; he's a daddy with 3 children, but he was a serious Hollywood player at the time. I mean, he was best friends with Robert Downey Jr. and Kiefer Sutherland, and I mean, he still is very good friends with those people. But he had it going on, so we had a lot of fun. Lots of opportunity for fun. Let's put it that way.
Thanks for calling in, Freddie.
Hey, you guys have a good night.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Quick here in the chat room. Somebody want to know what it was like the first time you put the glove on.
Well, they let me try the glove. I had a glove to work with that my dogs decided to disturb it.
See, and they told you an hour now he's barking.
Yeah, it wasn't me barking. It was Julieta. so they gave me a glove to work with because they're really really complicated, and to make it respond the way that that Robert did. You know what I mean? Like he played it like it was a violin, and so I had like a glove to work with for like a week prior to the opening of the first shooting the movie, and it really paid off. That glove is the real one. Not the secondary prop ones, but what would be considered the real first glove on the set. That was a weapon. Like that scene with my sister when I'm putting her in bed and the knives come out. I love that scene, by the way. I think that was so beautifully shot, and it's so creepy. But to like put that glove in the light, because what you have to do is you have to hit the lights and you have to hit the spot and the camera, and all those things are very detailed when you're shooting something like that, because it's reflective. So you have to move it in such a way that the camera doesn't show up in the glove, and so it's like that's a technical. You have to work with those quite a while, and it's creepy. It's like and like I said, I have one. So it's if I ever decide to become a serial killer, and you hear people, are like dying like Freddy Krueger, you can call the CSI or whatever and tell them I'm in Mexico.
Right.
But I'm just joking, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But don't go to sleep.
Exactly. Do you know if part 2 is ever gonna? Well, I'm sure it will be, but do you know anything about it being released on Blu-ray?
I'm sure it's going to be. Like they're doing a whole rollout with all of this with the new Nightmare on Elm Street. Mm-hmm. And this, the Nightmare franchise, the original Nightmare franchise is just alive and kicking. I'm telling you. I know that from, because I get quarterly residual checks from the thing, so I know how much it's being bought, how much it's being seen, where it plays, all over the world. And I'm telling you, I cannot tell you. Today I got a poster from Australia to sign, and then Slovakia, Russia, Thailand, like everywhere in the world. And like a lot of these countries, that series is just beginning to peak there. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, and then what's really amazing is like I have people on my fan page that are anywhere from 13 years old, 11, 12, 13 years old to like 60. You know what I mean? Like there's like 3 generations of people who have rediscovered this movie. And I really don't foresee that will probably ever stop. I think it'll be, I think 20 years from now, people will still be, whatever the medium is, whether it's, accessing it through the internet or like renting or whatever. I think that this movie has a super long shelf life. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. And I don't think the new Nightmare on Elm Street is going to put the brakes on the old one. I actually think it's going to actually elevate it in a certain way. Yeah. I expect a big check next month. So,
right. Yeah, I think. Yeah, definitely. I think every time they remake like when they remade Friday the 13th, then they put out all the special editions of the original Friday the 13th movies. So it's probably missing here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They like I get. What's really interesting is the different rollouts in different countries, and the way they roll the movie out in, say, Thailand as opposed to the way they roll it out in Germany, because of course all the boxes are different and they push different aspects of the movie. Yeah. So I have quite a collection of, or I have seen like most of the stuff in the world at this point. But it's funny to see like on some of them it's all Freddy, and then in some countries like in the Asian countries it's all me, because they like the blonde, like sort of soft boys are like big stars there. Mm-hmm. I used to be the spokesman for Nestle's chocolate in Japan for a couple of years, and
wow.
they liked yeah, I know. That was a trip. I had they could call in to speak to me on the telephone. It cost $1 to speak to me on the phone. And they would say,
Like
like,
a 900 number. That's pretty cool.
I was a 900 number. I had my old line of coffee mugs and all this kind of stuff. And their commercials there are like 2.5 minutes long, and they cross-pollinate. Like, it'd be like a stereo and the music. And, my house that I lived in, I was a typical American boy, but it was the penthouse at the Lexington Avenue Hotel. And they would pay me in cash, which was unbelievable. And, but they would call up on this like 900 number, and they'd say, like, well, what kind of girl do you like? And I would say, oh, I like my girlfriend to be 5'2" with brown hair and brown eyes, and like a typical Japanese girl. And but then I would get these fan mail. I say some of the Japanese fan mail because it looks really cool because they're the writing and the papers they use and all that kind of stuff. And they would always send me money. Like if a Japanese person would ask for my autograph, they would always send at least $50 in the mail.
Oh, that's
to
cool.
Post it.
Yeah.
Because I thought, I try to give everybody, I go to conventions and I sign autographs for $20 or whatever, the going rate is at those conventions. But I get a lot of requests for autographs online, and I don't sell my autographs online. And, but I do give them to certain people. I can't give them to everybody because you know what? It's too expensive.
Yeah, shipping.
Because of the shipping, because of the country I live in.
Right.
So, and the mail is not reliable. You know what I mean? Coming out of Mexico, coming into Mexico, it's very reliable, but going out is not so much. And so I really feel like especially if somebody's sending me something that's really, precious to them. Mm-hmm. I feel like the only way I can send it back to them is like FedEx or UPS or something like that, because I want them to actually get it. I don't want them to lose their thing.
Yeah.
But when I get requests from Buenos Aires in Argentina, and I know the kid is living in a slum, you know what I mean? And then those are the people that I make sure they get a picture. And then otherwise, sometimes I have to say no, and I feel bad about it. But literally, if I answered all the fan requests that I've had for pictures, it would cost me $1,000 a week just to send them out. And I love y'all, but not $52,000.
Well, I hope we get something autographed after the interview.
Well, of course.
All right.
You just
I want to ask real quick. Was you said after the movie, like you didn't take any roles, and did they offer you any roles in any of the sequels?
No, they never did, and a lot of people were really surprised about that. I think on certain levels, but also, I really did, make a real strong dropout. It's like it was very difficult to find me. I intentionally made it very difficult to find me. And it's easy to look back and, like have hindsight in 2020 on all those kind of things. But I came very close to what I would consider real stardom. And right around the time of Nightmare on Elm Street, I was like a very desirable commodity in California. And I think, for me as a person, I sort of believe we all have destinies or whatever. And I believe that I got sort of like pulled out of the jaws of death real quickly, because I don't think that I would have been the type of person who would have been a good movie star. I can't imagine, it's like I watch people today like Lindsay Lohan and, like people who are like friends of mine. I'm very good friends with Sarah Jessica Parker, and, I've known her since she was 13 years old. And I really don't know how they survive in that world. Because you're really you're stalked like an animal now, and it doesn't really even matter if you're a superstar. And the way that the press is so invasive now, my life could never have stood up to that kind of scrutiny. I think I would have been humiliated in a million different ways. And, I could think positive and think maybe I would have responded to those things in a cool way. but I don't really think that I was the type of person that would have. So I think that I think I got out at the right time. I mean, I accomplished my goal when I came to New York. I wanted to be an actor, and and I come from a small town. I had never been on an airplane. I gutted this thing out. Is what I did. I set my eyes on a prize, and you know what? I achieved it, and I feel really good about that. And then I went on to another life, and my goals have always been very, very high for myself. My expectations of myself have been really high. And you know what? Almost everything that I've set out to succeed in life, I've succeeded at it. And now I live in Mexico, and I do a lot of work with people who are poor, but I don't do like charity work. I teach people to be capitalists, and I have this gallery in this store. And I live in paradise. I'm 50 years old, and if I want to close my store and go to the beach, that's what I do. And so I feel like I've been blessed with an amazing, amazing, amazing life. And I don't really believe that I would trade my life for anybody else's. I would like to know what it's like to be, Tom, not particularly crazy Tom Cruise, but I would like to know what it's like to be that for a day. To have that kind of access to the world is kind of fantastic. But when you get that kind of access to the world, when you get a private jet, and I've been in that experience, where it's like you're inundated, you're surrounded, you give up a lot too. You give up, like even, you think about this. I made a few movies, and now it's 25 years later, and I'm talking to you. Mm-hmm. Fame never goes away.
True.
Ever, ever, ever goes away. One little piece of fame. And if I died tomorrow, you know what I mean? It would be Nightmare on Elm Street star. I mean, it doesn't matter. That's the way it happened. If I make a mistake, if I got arrested for drunk driving, say tomorrow, in some newspaper it would say, former child actor, another one arrested on drunk driving. Well, that person has no. I mean, I feel like the actor Mark was like a young person that like my nephew or something. Like it's like somebody I knew. I mean, I know it was my life and everything, but I look back on it really fondly. But on a lot of levels, I don't even feel like I'm the same person. You know what I mean? I'm a grown-up man with grown-up responsibilities, and I would be like, I love doing things like this with people like you who really care about what you're doing. I mean, you're doing this out of love, obviously, and and a true kind of good spirit. But, like people taking your pictures and going through the garbage can. And, I had a friend who died, and they went through his garbage cans, and it was a horror show for everybody involved. And I thought, you know what? I'm lucky that I avoided that. I really am. So, because I don't think I'm tough enough for that type of life. I'm too nice a guy.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. It's been an awesome interview. Everyone here in the chat room really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, too. And if you guys will all send me your address, I'll send you some FedEx. Some okay?
All right.
And thanks, everybody that was listening. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun for me. So I'll talk to you guys later. All right.
Thanks, man.
Good night.
Hi, this is Lisa Wilcox from Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com.